Welcome to Upticks. I'm Jake Falcon, the founder of Falcon Wealth Advisors and your host of Upticks. Today is episode 144, Taxes on Investments. Thank you for joining me back on the show. I hope all of you out there are staying safe and healthy during this horrible pandemic. The topic for today's show is taxes on investments. Now, my compliance likes me to do this, so a quick effort of disclosure. I am not your tax advisor, but I do tax planning for our clients at Falcon Wealth Advisors. So anything that we talk about regarding taxes, if you want the official sign of approval, go see your CPA. If you don't have a CPA and you want one, let me know. Certainly, maybe I can point you in the right direction. But of course, we can't publicly endorse anyone. So again, I encourage you to, again, double check everything that we do as far as tax planning with a qualified tax advisor. Okay, so taxes on investments, right? It's a double-edged sword. Most everyone likes to make a lot of money, but in the end, so does Uncle Sam. And so they want their taxes as part of all that. Now, just some definitions here so that you understand how taxes really work on your investments, because a lot of people I don't think fully do understand. So first off, if you have a 401k, if you have an IRA, if you have a Roth IRA, health savings account, a donor advised fund, right? All of these types of vehicles are great because they defer taxes, meaning you don't pay any taxes by buying or selling within these types of accounts. So you don't need to worry about taxes. Now, it's a whole nother topic for another show. If you take money from an IRA or a 401k, it may be taxed. Roth IRAs may be tax-free. So again, that's not what we're talking about today. I want to talk about actually taxes on investments when you make money. But if you have an IRA, 401k, Roth IRA, health savings account, donor advised fund, typically gains inside these accounts are not taxed when you realize them. So it's a good perk of having those types of accounts. All right, so you say, okay, Jake, I get all that. Talk to me about a regular brokerage account. So that's what I'm discussing today. So if you have a trust, regular just investment account, we call them checking accounts at Falcon Wealth Advisors because you can get checks, but you also can buy stocks and bonds and trade options in them. Typically, what happens is anytime you profit or you make a gain, you have to pay taxes, and it can either be short-term or long-term. And so what a short-term capital gain is any investment that you've held less than 1 year is subject to short-term capital gains. And that is typically taxed at whatever tax bracket you're in. Now, just conversely, if you buy something and you sell it and you lose money, it can actually count as a short-term capital loss. So you can potentially deduct it from your taxes as well. Now, anything that you've owned longer than a year is considered long-term, and that is taxed at a lower rate than short-term. I know, nice and confusing, right? So long-term capital gains rates are normally 15 or 20%, depending on what tax bracket you're in. So they're typically lower for most people. You can also have long-term capital losses. So again, they offset each other, long-term with long-term, short-term with short-term. So the idea is when you're looking at your taxes, because again, we're right in the midst of tax season now because it did get delayed out till May, you want to be cognizant of where you stand probably as you lead into the fourth quarter. Do I have a lot of tax gains? Do I have a lot of tax losses? How can I manage that? And that's one of the actual services that we do offer at Falcon Wealth Advisors is what we will do. It's called tax loss harvesting. So if you have some losses and you have some gains, we could sell individual stocks or bonds to pair some of that will influence your tax return, right? Both positive or negative. So you certainly can do a lot of tax planning along that. But this is the most important topic that I wanted to talk about today is that I don't, and I'm always going to repeat this, I don't want taxes to lead the investment conversation, meaning taxes should almost always be a secondary consideration. And the whole idea is if you bought a stock for $10 and now it's worth $100 and you don't want to sell it because you're going to have to pay taxes, to me, that is very, very short-sighted because the idea is, sure, you bought it for 10, it's worth 100. Yeah, you're going to have to pay Uncle Sam a lot of taxes, but the risk you're running is if that stock goes down to 90, 80, 70, hopefully not all the way back down to 10, you could wipe out all of your gains. And so not only do you not pay any taxes, it's because you didn't make any money. So a good point I always like to remind to our clients is that gains are good. And I know nobody likes to give more than their fair share to Uncle Sam, or most people don't. But sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and say, you know what? I started with $10. Now it's worth $100. I know some of that's got to go to Uncle Sam, but I'm still coming out far ahead than if I didn't invest at all, or if I just left it in cash or waited until it went all the way down back to what I paid for. Now, there's no saying that that'll happen either. Right. So it's something you just want to be cognizant of, but it's a very important message of today's show is that you don't want to let taxes define your investment strategy. It's secondary. So number one is hitting your target rate of return that matches up with your financial plan. And then number two are taxes and some of these other considerations, right? But it's not number one. Taxes should always, almost always be secondary when you're looking at your investment return. I'd much rather make a client 10, 15, 20% and them have to pay taxes than to not do anything and they don't make any money. To me, it's silly, but I understand that as humans, sometimes it's hard to write that check. And I say this to my clients oftentimes. It's easy for me to say, sell it, right? But I'm not the one paying the taxes. So I completely get it. So just remember this, though. At Falcon Wealth Advisors, we're going to guide our clients toward hitting their financial goals by hitting their target rate of returns. We don't want to be silly. Like if we can literally wait one more day and go into long-term capital gains rate versus short-term, then we're certainly going to do that and be mindful of that. But we're not going to let taxes drive our investment decisions. If we can lock in a gain because we made money, we made a good investment, we're going to want to do that. And of course, you're always going to want to pair that and double check that with your tax advisor, just like we pair it with the financial plan. Right? So it's very, very important. Now, there are other financial instruments out there, tax-free municipal bonds that are kind of the best of both worlds. You don't have it locked up in an IRA, so you can get to it, and the interest that it's paying you is tax-free, which is great. And many times, depending on where you live and what type of bond we buy, that interest could be tax-free on federal, state, and your local level. The problem with the current environment, though, is that tax-free bonds really aren't paying much. In Kansas, I think it's around 1%, depending on the time frame, and Missouri is pretty close to that. So 1 or 2%, you're not going to get a lot of money, but again, it's going to be tax-free. But to my point, I'd almost rather buy a bond or something else that's going to pay you, a taxable bond or something else that's going to pay you 2, 3, 4, 5%, even though you have to pay taxes, you're still coming out ahead. So again, all back to the theme of today's show is that don't let taxes be your number one consideration. Yes, you want to be mindful. Is this short-term? Is this long-term? Jake, am I going to have to file a quarterly estimate? Again, you want to check that with your CPA. How is this going to impact me from a tax perspective? But in the end, you also want to make sure it's matching up with your target return and helping you achieve those all-important financial goals. Okay, so don't get too caught up on taxes. You want to be aware and mindful of what, if any, implications are going to be present, especially if you're going to be making a large transaction and selling a lot of stock for a large gain. I completely get that. But don't let it be your guiding factor. Taxes should be number two on that decision-making list. Okay, good. So quick shout out before I've got some fun news for you today. But before I go into that, I will put up the subscribe here button. So if you're not already subscribed of Falcon Wealth Advisors Collective YouTube channel, I highly encourage you to subscribe to that. That's the number one way to make sure that you're not going to miss out on another episode of Upticks. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast platform, thank you so much for tuning in. Please feel free to subscribe and give me a thumbs up button if you like our content. I'm out there. I'm growing my network out there. So again, I'm out there on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. If we're not already connected, please feel free to send me a friend request. My company, Falcon Wealth Advisors, is also on those same 4 platforms. Okay, so for the fun news today, I did make it out to Pinehurst in North Carolina. I've got a great buddies from high school that I met up there along with some of their friends, and we had a wonderful time. And so today, real quickly, I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm going to show you some pictures. It's picture time here. So just real quick, again, so this is one of the par 4s at Pinehurst. So for all of you that don't know, Pinehurst is a golf resort in North Carolina. I think it was built before 1900 by Donald Ross, one of the world-renowned golf course architects out there. He's designed golf courses. Actually, there's one in Kansas City designed by him as well, Hillcrest. But Pinehurst is probably his most famous course. I think of the public courses you can play in America, Pinehurst has got to be in the top 10. And I would say that I do highly recommend it. It is every bit worth of the money that we spent to go play out there. So this is one of the par fours. I did want to show you this one because I thought it was a really cool picture. Just shows you how, the rolling hills, very scenic out there. But all this green grass is fairway, but you can see just outside the fairway is a lot of sand, almost desert-like in North Carolina, with all these little bushes out there, which is crazy. But they play that sand as waste. I think it's called wasteland or waste bunker, maybe, meaning you can ground your club. So it's not like a traditional sand trap where you have to hover it. You can go in there and hack away and take practice swings and ground your club. In fact, all around the green complexes, you can ground your club, even in the sand. So I was out there taking practice swings in the bunkers, which actually helped quite a bit in there. But very beautiful view. We did play the back tees, made it very challenging, but you had to do it, right? Or at least my friends had to do it. But it was a good time. Like I said, very cool golf course. This is from just outside the pro shop. These are some of the major championship trophies that they have in a case there. I thought that was a really cool photo opportunity. This is the 18th green here. So right here behind this is a restaurant where we actually ate right around here. We had our lunch after the round there, and it's really cool because you can see people coming up 18. I was lucky enough to hit my ball, my second shot, about 4 feet away from the hole, but it was above it, and the greens are lightning quick out there, and I just tapped it, and it was going towards the hole, and unfortunately it didn't go in. But you can see all of these greens out there are very dome shaped. So if I would have hit my ball here, it would have rolled right into the bunker there. So it's very difficult to hold those greens out there. This is my buddies. So again, a couple of my friends from high school, another gentleman from junior golf, great guys, great group of people. This is the 18th tee box. So that was just where we were here. And that's from the tee box. And then we've got the whole group here. There was 8 of us. That's Payne Stewart, who's a Missouri native, who actually won the US Open out there. So they erected a statue of him, which I thought was pretty cool. Very famous pose that he did in there. So great trip. Like I said, can't speak highly of enough. Very fortunate to get to go out there. So again, I want to hear more about your golf stories. So if you have some favorite golf courses that you'd recommend to go out and see around the country, please send them my way. Post them on Facebook, however you want to do it. And I'd love to hear more about your golf trips. Thank you again for tuning in. I hope you all have a great week.